guys, today I am going to give you a review on daily driving in Integra and if it is a good daily. So we will be going over the pros, the cons, and what to look out for when buying one of these cars, and we'll also go for a drive in this one. And before we get into the video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the car. This has been a long ongoing project. If you're interested in seeing how far it's come and where it started, so go back to my other videos titled GSR Rescue and Revival Series, and you'll see kind of why the car is in the condition it is right now and where it's come from. So yeah, anyways, let's get into the quick overview. So this is my 1997 Acura Integra GSR that I've been doing a budget restoration on and just getting it back to stock. And yeah, it's come a very, very long way from where I got it, and continuing to try to make it nicer and do slight modifications here and there. So as of right now, the only modifications done to the car is the front lip and the spoiler. This is a replica Type R spoiler. I just don't like the GSR ones. I have the stock one over there somewhere. And the Ionica exhaust. And just a quick disclaimer on the exhaust. Ionica exhaust is really awesome. I love this exhaust because it's quieter and deeper than like a fart can you'd buy for something else like that. But it will not fit on certain years and models of Integra. So you can go on their website, buy the Integra exhaust, but it'll have specific years. If you do want it to fit on like a 97 and a couple other years that it says it won't fit, all you have to do is make a custom test pipe, because the catalytic converter and the header are different lengths between certain years and models. So everything else under the car is exactly the same. You just have to, like I said, get a custom test pipe made. Anyways, other than that, the car is on stock suspension. Everything else is stock steering wheel, stock shifter, stock airbox, and I'll go into that in more detail in a minute. So first I'm going to go into the cons, because I feel like that's the most important thing when you're looking into buying a vehicle or building one, because you want to know what difficulties am I going to have with this car if I buy one. So the first con we're going to talk about is burning oil. It's a Honda, it burns oil. Even lower miles cars, they burn oil. It doesn't mean the engine's bad by any means whatsoever. So sometimes, yeah, you'll buy a Honda that just burns an absurd amount of oil because it was just beat on and it wasn't taken care of, wasn't maintenance well, etc. And yeah, you'll get Hondas like that. But for the most part, all of them will be burning a little bit of oil. There's nothing to be concerned about whatsoever. And as long as you just check it, depending on how much you drive and how far you drive, once a week, once a month, whatever, you'll get the hang of it and kind of get into a routine with it depending on your vehicle. And while we're on the topic of oil, I will show you a couple of the main leaking points of these engines. And this is going to apply to the LS and the GSR, as well as the Type R. All of this besides the VTEC solenoid. So the VTEC solenoid will leak a little bit. There's a gasket down here. It's very easy to replace, very easy to get to, and the part is very cheap. But a lot of the times you'll see oil sitting here on the block, and people think like the head gasket's leaking for some reason, which doesn't make sense. But anyways, you'll see oil piling up here and on top of the transmission, and that's usually because of this or your cam seal. And the cam seal applies to every model of the Integra. Same thing with the distributor O-ring. Inside there, there's a little O-ring that can also cause oil to leak, and your valve cover gasket. So those are just common oil leaking spots. Any vehicle will have oil leaks in common areas that they leak, but they're luckily very easy and very cheap to fix on a Honda. This is embarrassing. I just realized I'm missing a bolt and a nut for the header. They must have rattled off or something. I had the header off a couple times when I was redoing this, but let me find one of each quick and get back to the video. Conveniently enough, I didn't even have to dig through my parts box because I got a parts car right here. And honestly, I'm glad this happened because this is a perfect example to show you about the oil leaks. This is a parts car I have, and as you can see, there's oil everywhere because that seal right there is bad and people just don't replace it. Same thing with the valve cover. You can see all the seepage, how it's kind of like a powdery look. That's how you know it's seeping. But right here where it's really wet, that's where you know your oil is leaking. And all down through there as well. Very messy, very gross, easy fix, cheap to fix. Okay, now we're back to normal, and I can tell you why this happened, because all of them were pretty loose. I used one of these thick aluminum gaskets. They work well. People say they're junk. They're like, oh, they leak. They leak because I torqued it to spec. You're supposed to torque it a little bit more than spec because it has to crush, and I didn't do that, so that's why that happened. But anyways, let's get back to the video. So while we're still under the hood, let's talk about the transmission. So there are 4 different basic transmission categories with these cars, so I'm going to go over those. I know there's several different little fine differences overseas and this and that, so don't call me out. I'm talking about the 4 basic ones that you get in the US as they categorize. So first, you have the automatic transmission. No one cares. Second, you have the manual LS, which is a 5-speed, longer geared transmission. And I say longer based on the other models. The LS transmission was the basic 5-speed transmission you get in these cars. Very good gear ratio for daily driving on the highway, all that. It's an open differential transmission, and yeah, no complaints about it. So third, you have the GSR transmission, which is what I have in my car. The GSR transmission was an open differential, shorter geared transmission. The shorter gears obviously help with acceleration as well as staying in the power band when you're going around corners, downshifting, and so forth. The only downfall that comes with it is driving on the interstate, especially out here in Montana where the roads or the interstate is 80 miles an hour. So everyone's doing like 85, 90, and this thing's just screaming. If you're somewhere else, like there's a lot of states that the regulation is 60 or 55 to 65, and it's definitely a lot more tolerable. But even out here, I drive this car a ton. I've put thousands of miles on it on the interstate, and it's fine. It handles it. It's just a little bit louder, and that's about it. And lastly, you have the Type R transmission, which is essentially a little bit shorter gears than the GSR, and it came with a limited slip differential. So overall, the transmissions throughout all the models, they're good transmissions, no major issues. The only thing you might find with like a car that get used is if it was beat on, most of the time it's second or third, you'll get a grind or both, and that's just because it was beat on, and that's really it. I mean, people say it's a common Honda issue, but it's not. It's just a common Honda owner issue. So I had a LS Integra that I actually just sold, had over 200,000 miles on it, and that transmission shifted like butter, never been rebuilt or anything, and that's because it was adult owned its entire life. So other than that, great cars. And if you need to fix a little bit of grind, if you get it in either, I don't know, whatever transmission you get, GM Synchro Mesh usually fixes that and makes it last for a while. You don't have to rebuild your transmission right away to get rid of the grind. I actually did it in this car because third gear was grinding pretty good, and it made the grind go away completely. And a common upgrade people will do for like a GSR transmission is they'll swap out the 5th gear with the LS transmission. That way you have a nice cruising gear on the highway, but you also have those first 1 through 4 gears that are short for acceleration and just, you know, staying in the power band. But I'm going to kind of go through this as the cars are, not modification wise. On to the next con. I kind of got off topic with the transmission there, but I guess there's some cons in there as well. But onto the trunk. So on the 94 to 97, this is how you open your trunk. You had a nice little lever there, or you could use a key in the trunk, obviously. And then on 98 to 2001, they changed it, and you only had a gas flap lever right here. And then you'd have to come to the back of the car, and there was a little lever in here that you had to slide over. As you can see, my parts car over here just has the gas flap lever. And unfortunately, I already sold the hatch off this, so I can't show you the little lever, but you can't really see it anyways. It's tucked under there. So this con is only going to apply to the 98 to 2001 models because that's when they changed it. And the reason why it's a con is because that little lever thing always failed. I haven't had one Integra that was 98 or newer that the little lever worked. It doesn't sound like a big deal because it really isn't, but it's really annoying because you had to use the key to open your trunk every time. So you couldn't have your car running and open the trunk. You couldn't load groceries or have groceries in your hand and pop the trunk because you needed both hands to turn the key and then lift the hatch. So it was just a major pain in the butt, and that's why those models or those years are going to be a con for the trunk. Anyways, once you get the trunk open, they're basically exactly the same. So definitely pro on the trunk on these cars because it is massive. If you're not a racer like me and don't have a subwoofer, this thing is like a mini truck. You put these seats down, they go down flat, and you have so much room to load stuff. My brother and I have put engines in the back of these things, no problem, and there's so much loading room. I mean, look at that. There's just enormous amount of room in here, and for that, Integras are a plus. And while we're back here, I'm going to give you another con, which is the antenna. As you can see on mine, I deleted it because the mechanism that goes up and down failed all the time. So what would happen is you turn your key on. If your radio was already on, your antenna would come up right away, or if you turn the radio on and off manually, then it would go up and down based on when there was power to the radio. So every time you shut your car off, antenna would go down and it just failed quickly. As you can see on my parts car, it still has the original base on it, but the antenna itself got snapped off. Usually they would get stuck up, which isn't that big of a deal. I mean, you just have the antenna up all the time, your radio still worked, but you just hear a weird clicking noise anytime you turn your car on and off. And let's be real, it's 2023, so I mean, if this car doesn't have an aftermarket radio in it already with Bluetooth, then I mean, just swap it out if your antenna does snap off, but not that big of a deal. Oh yeah, one more con about the trunk that I almost forgot about is the taillight seals. This is a common issue with older Hondas across the board, and it's a very simple fix. I don't know why people just don't do it, but the taillight seals leak when it rains or when you wash your car, so you get a little bit of water in your trunk. All you gotta do is replace the seal. They sell them dirt cheap on eBay, or there's other manufacturers that make better ones, but that's really it. And just to show you how easy this is, I got taillights over here. Here's your taillight seal. All you do is pop the taillight out, pull that foam off, put a new piece of foam on, and that's literally it. On to the next con, and that's going to be rust. So this is going to depend on where you live, whether you have to worry about rust or not, but these will be the common areas you have to look for rust on these cars. Here in Montana, there is no rust because they don't salt the roads, you don't get that humidity, and so on, so thankfully my GSR is pretty clean. Over on the parts car, there's a little bit of rust. This isn't like a Montana original car, so you can see some of the spots where it's starting, and it usually is much worse, like New York and any place that they salt like that, Minnesota, Wisconsin, blah, blah, blah. But you'll get rust here. It'll go down through the rocker. The rockers will rot out under the little side skirt, and all the way up through here, you'll get rust. These are usually rotted out like that, just all over. Quarter panel rust is a very big issue on these in any of the salt states. And over on this side, you can see a little bit more rust starting, but usually down this area in the quarter panel, like all the way up to here, it's really bad too. And another way to kind of prevent this, even if you live in like a southern state with humidity, you may get rust here, and that's because from the factory, there's like a rubber strip that goes on the inside of this lip, and that'll hold moisture, dirt, and salt. And you want to take those off immediately, especially if your quarter panels are clean. I don't know why they did that from the factory, but that's one of the issues. I mean, this car probably wouldn't have been nearly as bad if it didn't have those strips on it, but I ripped those off when I got it. So let's go to the interior cons of this car. So let's start with the door. One of the issues with the Integra is the driver's side window switch. It gets used the most, and it eventually gets really sloppy, and you gotta shift it through like 5 different gears, push down on it, and blah 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 to get the window to go up and down. It's not really a normal wear point because a lot of older cars don't have this issue, but that's just one of the things to keep in mind. This one's not that bad, honestly. It actually works pretty well because I got this switch out of a different parts car with lower miles. Next is the window regulator. I don't know why, but I've had quite a few Integras and the window regulators go bad. I don't know if it's just from the door getting slammed or something. I've also had where just the bolts that hold the window to the regulator get loose, and it's an easy fix. You just get it on track and then tighten them and you're good to go. But yeah, another common wear point is the seat bolsters, which is honestly common through 80s and 90s cars. You get a lot of cars with nice seat bolsters on them back then, and they just got rubbed down and torn. Not really a big issue, but if you're picky, then I guess just get it reupholstered or stitched back up. And while we're on the topic of seats, let's talk about the back seats. I'll start off with saying they're definitely usable. There's a lot of cars where they're absolutely not usable, but in the Integra, they are definitely usable. So I'm 6 foot tall, and this is my seating position. You still have a little bit of room for legs, but for anyone tall, it's obviously not going to be that comfortable, and especially if you're tall, your head hits the rear window. I've ridden in the back of my brother's Integra several times before we gutted it, and I have hit my head on the rear window so many times and so hard. and it's not pleasant. So if you're someone that's kind of tall, or you have friends that are tall that sit in the back, yeah, I don't recommend sitting in the back. At least on the two doors. Obviously, the four door has more room. They have a different trunk and rear window. So the last con I can think of off the top of my head, I know I've been going back and forth with pros and cons a little bit, so I apologize. I'm trying to just do it by section, I guess. But Honda owners. Honda owners are those kids that throw a fart can, like the loudest one they can find on their car, rev the crap out of it, try to race everyone with their stock single cam Honda or stock B series Honda, think it's fast, and just do very untasteful mods to the vehicle and just end up ruining the car beyond repair. And I know this because I have bought several Honda owner cars to part out because that's about all they're worth by the time they're done with them. So when you're looking at buying a Honda, look for those cheap eBay suspension mods, cheap tacky interior modifications and stuff like that, because that just kind of shows the care that they put into the vehicle. Obviously, they are not buying good parts for it. They haven't been maintaining it. They thought it was a race car and they were beating the crap out of it and their whole ownership, and who knows what the last owner was doing with it. So stay away from cars that look like that, because yeah, you're just going to get problems. And that goes with any vehicle. But you also have to prepare yourself for the reputation that comes with owning a Honda because of people like that. You're probably wondering, like, why am I talking so much smack about Honda owners when I own them? So I consider myself a Honda enthusiast. I appreciate these cars. I know a decent amount about them. I don't know everything about them, but I also put genuine parts into them when I build them. I am not disrespectful when I drive on the street. I'm not disrespectful to other people. I enjoy other vehicles as well. I don't just enjoy Hondas, as you can see if you watch my channel. Honda enthusiasts dislike Honda owners more than like lifted truck owners hate Hondas, and that's because they give us such a bad reputation. Even though lifted truck owners are the biggest racers on the street anymore, but that's a different subject for a different day. Anyways, rant over, let's get back to the pros of owning an Integra. It is 2023. Fuel mileage, definitely great in these cars. I have a GSR, so I have the shorter gear ratio, like I said before, so my fuel economy is still 26 to like 29 miles of the gallon on the interstate, and that's driving like 85 miles an hour everywhere, so it's screaming almost at 5,000 RPM. Still get good gas mileage. If you have an LS with the longer gears, you get even better, like 30 plus, and I know that because I've owned both of them. Next, we'll talk about price. Unfortunately, the price of older Hondas is going up, just because I guess people are starting to realize how good of cars they are and they're becoming collectible. You can still get them pretty cheap, especially if you're buying them from like an adult, because they don't think it's worth $1 million, because they're really not, but they are definitely very good cars and you can still get them affordable around the $3,000 range. Next, we'll talk about maintenance, and we'll kind of jumble a few things in with this, but these cars are so easy to work on. This is, of all the cars I've owned and worked on, even being a mechanic, these are the easiest car you can work on. Even my 81 square body out there, I would much rather work on a Honda. Parts for these things, super cheap still. Even quality parts, very cheap. They still make them. Even these cars getting older, the aftermarket is only growing with it. Reliability, these cars are extremely reliable. As Honda goes for a whole, very reliable cars. You keep oil in it, do your routine maintenance stuff, and the car will literally last your lifetime. My GSR specifically was not maintained well by like the few previous owners that had it. Like, I know there was a female that owned it, and this thing was literally like a run into the ground and sell it once it was undrivable. And yeah, it definitely showed, and you could just tearing the car apart and whatever when I got it to fix it up. You could just see the lack of maintenance throughout its life, and even now it is over 200,000 miles on it with me driving it. Have not rebuilt the motor, have not rebuilt the transmission, and it is still cooking just fine. So my recommendation is finding one as stock as possible to buy if you're looking to get into one. That way you don't have any weird surprises. You know it was somewhat maintained well if it was an adult-owned vehicle, and it doesn't have any weird, untasteful mods done to it that are sketchy and unsafe. So the last pro I'm going to give you about the Acura Integra, or Honda as a whole, is it does not take much to make these cars fun. So quickly, I'm going to tell you what not to do. Everyone wants to make these cars go faster. I mean, yeah, if you're building a race car, but if you're daily driving the car, then don't do it. Don't put a turbo on it. Don't do all these engine mods. If you want a nice daily driver that's fun, this is what I suggest you do. Suspension. Buy yourself a decent set of coilovers and a camber kit to bring the wheels back out to normal track once you lower it, and you will have a blast in this car for about $600. And maybe an exhaust, just so you can hear the RPM and stuff better and give it a little bit of tone to it. A lot more fun to drive. Anyways, let's go for a quick drive. Especially for someone that's 6 foot tall and I have back issues, so these seats are definitely comfortable. Everything is very accessible, and you'll notice my steering wheel is crooked. I did an alignment and the steering wheel was off. It drives straight, but the steering wheel is crooked. So other than that, no shakes, no bumps, no weird noises. Here, I'll give you a little acceleration test. I'm not going to launch it because this is my daily. I don't want to break an axle. And that was 70. Before we get on the interstate, because I don't know how noisy it'll be, I just wanted to give you a rundown. It's a speedometer on this car. It's about 5 miles an hour off at 80 miles an hour. So essentially, I have to go 90 on my speedometer to go 85 and keep up with traffic. So that's one thing with these older cars. In general, any old car, speedometer will be a little bit off. And I like to use a GPS when I first get a car to be able to see the difference. Sits at about 4,600 RPM, going 85. My Civic sits about 5,000, and that has a Type R transmission. And another thing I forgot to mention is the Integra is a luxury car, technically. So it has all the amenities you'd want in a daily driver, you know, as long as it hasn't been messed with. It's got air conditioning, cruise control. Every model besides a Type R and RS came standard with a sunroof, power locks, power windows, and yeah, it's just overall a very nice car, very nice feel. It's comfortable, all the above. And it's also easy to modify. You can have all those features of a Civic, you know, the good handling and just whatever, race car feel, I guess, or tuner feel in a luxury car. So overall, I think you know my opinion. Should you get this or consider a Acura Integra for a daily driver? Absolutely. It is a very versatile car. You can do a lot with it. It's comfortable, easy to travel with. It's just a very nice overall car, especially if it's your first car or, you know, something you want to start tinkering with cars on. It is very easy to work on, and it just gives you the grace of having a little bit of everything in one vehicle. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Sorry it was a lot of rambling. I just wanted to make an informational video for anyone that's looking to buy an older Honda, or specifically an Acura Integra. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it helped you. And if it did, I appreciate a like. Subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the builds and the projects and the process of what's to come with this car, because I am going to modify it a little bit and make it kind of like an OEM plus vehicle. And if you want to see more pictures, more content, subscribe to my Instagram, Conjo_brothers. And as always, thank you for watching.